TM Forum, we spend a lot of our time recognizing that the world is always hybrid. We never finish deploying one thing before we have to deploy another thing. So a couple of people asking, given there's no standard to interface to product catalogs, how would you deal with those legacy product catalogs? How would you deal with keeping those in synchronization? Is that do you have to do a custom integration there? Or and do you keep the legacy catalog systems running in parallel with the master catalog overlaying, or does one replace the other? I think you've kind of talked about that, but just talk about that, the practicalities of the legacy for a little bit there.
So I think when you think about standards and what could govern the interaction between an enterprise centralized catalog and legacy systems, there are probably two levels. There's the data semantics standard and then the integration technology standard. So on the data semantics standard, when you look at typical legacy systems around CRM, billing, charging, the model of the data, or rather the content of the data that those systems store around product is fairly consistent, whether it's billing application A or billing application B or C or whatever. And so when we look at the data semantics of what information we have to get from the catalog to those systems, it is fairly standard. And as you mentioned, Barry, the forum has done some work around defining APIs that cater to that data semantic standard, and certainly the amount of systems that we've integrated catalog into, those are proven out pretty well. Then you look at the technology standard, and this is where you find much more inconsistency, and that's due to the age of the different legacy systems. You'll have legacy systems that are over 20 years old that will demand that are completely closed, and the notion of trying to get external data into their back-end tables is challenging but not impossible. And so when you look at and you contrast that to more modern platforms where those systems are capable of actually reaching out in a real-time interaction through web services and getting the product-related data they need, that's actually a much more straightforward, simpler approach. And so again, with all the different systems that we've integrated with, we have not come across a set of technology that we cannot address and work with in terms of how we get the data into those systems. Most systems, most legacy systems, to address the last part of the question, they do operate with the notion that the product-related data they require is somewhere inside their own system. And so therefore, oftentimes when you're talking about establishing an enterprise catalog and centralizing the information, you're not talking about pulling those catalogs out. You're talking about asserting master control of the data that those catalogs use. And the more modern the system is, the chances are that system hasn't been architected to be completely dependent on internal sources of data. So when we put in an enterprise catalog, we're governing which information is available to which system, at which point, through which mechanism. And so when Simon showed the blueprint earlier on, depending on the system we're talking to, the way we get the data in there and the data that gets in there could vary. But this is a fairly well-proven blueprint at this stage, and there aren't any surprises here in terms of the technologies we're up against or the data models that we have to support.